Kia ora koutou, Dee from Waipa District Libraries. Thanks for joining us. I'm here today with one of our library patrons, Chris Smiley, who approached me about some photos that he had taken on a trip to Tibet. I agreed that it would make a wonderful display and that it would be great to supplement the display with some commentary, hence why we are here today. So, Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Dee.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. So look, you and your wife Hilary visited Tibet in October 2018 in autumn. Can you tell us what was your reason or motivation for going? I know you said to me earlier that it's not a place that many people have gone to visit.
Well, our interest in Tibet started after our interest in Nepal. We had planned to go to Everest Base Camp, and so did manage to do that in the early part of October, but thinking that we would be acclimatized to the altitude and relatively close to Tibet, we added this on to our other visit to Nepal. But it turned out to be one of the highlights of our visit.
Oh, fantastic. Were there any special requirements or visas needed to get into Tibet?
Yes, it technically is China, and it also you are required to have a guide when you're taken around, and you need special entry requirements. It's just a matter of doing the paperwork, and then they supply you with a guide.
Right, so you have, of course, a wonderful selection of photos, half of which we have on display in our Cambridge Library for those who are able to come in and view them. For those that are not able to, or who wish to have more information about the photos, we're obviously doing this commentary right now, and we're going to hopefully pop them on our YouTube channel combined with this commentary. So we're going to take a walk through them. So Chris, would you like to start?
Yeah, the first photo is a photo across the city, but I think before you look at that photo, you have to realise that it's pretty high up, that it's actually, Lhasa is 11,990 feet above sea level, or 3,656 metres. So we were a little surprised getting into the taxi from the airport to find that there was emergency oxygen available.
Wow.
Which I didn't need at the time, but definitely altitude is a factor that all visitors need to take into consideration.
Wow, okay. So the terrain, of course, is quite amazing, but the buildings are quite uniform, but there's also a lot of trees, I notice.
There aren't very many trees in Tibet, but in Lhasa they have cultivated a lot of trees. It's a very attractive, pretty city, but Tibet is so dry and cold that it's not heavily forested.
Right. So the next sequence of shots are of the Gyegu Monastery and the monks. Can you tell us a little bit about each of these shots?
I took this first photo because I thought it showed the monks enjoying themselves and being like normal young men, fooling around, teasing, which they are. And often monks will serve only a couple of years in a monastery and then go out and become librarians or take up other jobs. So there's quite a lot of a rotation of jobs, and of course there are monks. Perhaps the more senior monk shown in the next photo.
So this is so we've just been talking about number 2, and now we're talking about number 3, which is inside the Gyegu Monastery.
I think this monk was leading the prayer, and we were fortunate to be allowed in whilst this was going on. And there's a lot of atmosphere with chanting and banging of cymbals, and I think it's not unreasonable that the next photo shows that the monks were being poured tea, and Tibetan tea is traditionally made from yak butter, and is probably quite substantial, I think, but that's what the next photo shows.
Yeah, so that's number 5.
Yes.
Do we know if it's, I believe it's Tibet's national drink. Do we know if it's sweet or is it bitter, or what kind of, do we have a feeling for what kind of tea it might be?
We were never given any tea of that traditional nature. We were just given Western type tea from India. But I think it was originally from yak butter, and I think you could add rice or noodles and make it a bit more substantial.
Right, I see. And the next shot, which is number 6, I see we've got outside a Buddhist ceremony of some description.
This one is a little hard to explain because I'm not sure what the Buddhist occasion was, but it was part of the, we were lucky just to chance upon it. They were burning juniper leaves, juniper twigs, and pouring oil on it. And the guide we had, because you have to be accompanied by a guide everywhere you go, was actually also unable to explain to us, but it's a Buddhist ceremonial occasion.
Okay, so I'm just going to flip to number 26, which is of the butter lamps, which again is with the yak butter, but I think you said to me more recently they're using vegetable oil. Can you tell us a little bit about the presence in the monasteries?
Yes, in the monasteries, there's only a picture here showing about 20 butter lamps, but around every corner in the monastery there might be 50 or 60 in one space, and I think I was told that it was originally to help focus the mind and aid meditation. It's quite a challenge to keep them all going because they go most of the day, and originally it was yak butter, but more recently I believe vegetable oil is used.
Okay. Numbers 27 and 29, we've got monks relaxing and monks reading. Do we know how their day is kind of set out and how long they commit to certain regimens during their day?
I think it varies a lot, but I think part of the day is spent in early morning prayers. Part of the day is spent in being taught and teaching others.
So younger monks?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it is quite a significant part to educate young boys.
Yes. To move on to the Lhasa Palace, and we have a magnificent large format shot that Chris and Hilary have taken. Chris, can you tell us a bit about the palace? And in particular, the shots that we've got both at night and with those deep blue skies. So we're looking at items 10 and 38.
Well, the Lhasa Palace is a UNESCO World Heritage site and is considered one of the wonders of the world. It is in a very commanding position overlooking Lhasa, the capital city, and previously it was the home of the Dalai Lama. It was first built in the 7th century, but this current building was rebuilt in 1649, and it has 1,000 and more rooms, and it is quite hard to climb up to. It's got very steep steps, and it is available for tourists to enter a few of the rooms.
Right.
But I think the significant thing is that it at one time was a hugely thriving building where there were thousands of monks, and I think when the Dalai Lama was more significant in Tibet, it was of great significance for the administration of the country.
Right. Do we know? Obviously, I haven't been there, and I don't have any knowledge of the history of the palace or what is it currently used for? And do you think there's a large proportion of the 1,000 rooms that are used, or?
I think only a few hundred are used, and there are. I wouldn't like to say how many, but a few hundred monks still living there and
so
teaching.
It's still a house, a
holy
holy place.
It is
for
a holy
the
place,
monks.
and it's available for tourists with booking.
Yes.
But it's not exactly like the Tower of London with many people that you have to book, and your guide has to have a ticket, and they're quite restrictive for the numbers going through.
Yes. So I guess your advice is don't just rock up and expect to be able to get in.
No.
Okay. Was there anything else that struck you about the palace, or its imposing nature, or anything of that nature?
Well, it probably reflects an extremely strong sense of the Buddhist religion in 1649 to aspire to such a huge building. Many people were living in much smaller houses built with rocks and stones and limited facilities. So this is rather grand, to say the least, for 1649.
Yeah. Do we know if the monks made it, or do we know who built it?
No, I don't.
No. Okay. That's something for research for another day. So we're going to move on to the built heritage and day-to-day life. Chris, can you take us through some of the shots that we've got here? So we've got 13, which is a Tibetan old quarter of Lhasa. We've got 14, which is the outside staircases to these houses. 17, traditional decorations on wood. And 32, the old quarter Lhasa market area. We've also got 7, which is the Barkor area of Lhasa, and number 9, which is a street scene in Lhasa.
Well, number 13 shows a fairly typical street scene in the old quarter, but I think it's worth mentioning that Lhasa has many old areas, but it has also very many more new areas that have been rebuilt and newly built, and these areas we didn't get to see, and these are mostly where Chinese people seem to live, but the old section is the area where tourists tend to be taken. And as I say, that number 13 shows a typical street, and the number 14, I'm not sure why the outside ladder is there, but it is probably just a practical thing, that it's less complicated to build a way of getting upstairs or downstairs. The number 17 showing the carving is a very commonly seen thing around the Buddhist temples, and it's beautifully painted in gilt.
It's interesting looking at that one. It kind of reminded me of kind of Thai style decoration. Is there that? You get that kind of influence?
So. Yes, I think that would be. That's probably also the tradition as well. And you have to remember that wood was used sparingly, and it was quite special to use wood in that way and have it painted. The other photograph of the ladies sitting on the steps, I think, is just, I thought, a random, typical shot. October is the month that we were there, and it was fairly mild during the day, but everybody was prepared for temperatures to drop, and wearing hats and woolen scarves or thick coats are definitely the manner that people dress. But I think that just was taken as a random shot to show that people doing what people do, meet in town with friends.
And just a little bit on the number 7, which is the Barkor area of Lhasa.
Yeah. Now, this area is quite unusual, or not unusual. This is very significant to Buddhists because this area one's expected to walk counterclockwise, and you gain credits towards the Buddhist religion by walking and using the prayer wheels. So prayer wheels can be of all sizes, from ones used by hand, shown in the picture number 8, to the large ones that people push around. But by moving them or spinning them and walking counterclockwise in the Buddhist religion, this can be helpful. So that's why the Barkor area is an area that's very significant.
Right, okay. So we're going to move on. We've got some lovely pictures of people, and we're going to talk about some of these people. So, Chris, can you take us through those photos?
Well, number 8 is a picture of a dealer who seemed happy to be photographed. He had his prayer wheel, as many do. He was an amber, coral and turquoise dealer, and he was buying and selling, and in fact there were quite a number of these gentlemen that were buying and selling, so I guess it's a matter of getting a price from one and comparing it to another.
Were they in like a market type of situation,
Yes.
Or was he literally just outside his residence?
No, he was in the market.
Okay,
yes,
right. Yeah.
This young girl, number 21, we actually gave them a lift up the hill. She and her, I presume, mother, who was number 22, just because we were in a tourist vehicle and it looked like a steep hill, so we offered them a ride. And they were very friendly and didn't mind me asking for a photograph. But this is October clothing, and I think they were enjoying just being out and about.
And you've taken a charming picture of a couple here, and I know you said to me when we were going through the photos the contrast between the gentlemen and the ladies.
They were very obliging, and it seemed to me that possibly she was very stylish, having a rather pale face, and maybe had been made up compared to her husband's
Yes,
skin
who was
colour.
looking a little bit more rugged, shall we say?
Yeah. yeah.
And explain to us this lovely picture, number 11, of the early morning exercise or dancing in traditional clothing.
Well, these two in the centre I haven't shown terribly well, but these two were at the just in a garden area, and there were maybe 100 people standing or stretched out, doing stretches and exercises, and they were being led, the group, very informal group, it seemed like anyone who came along was happy to join in, and they were just being led by these two who had exercises in mind and stretches and were wearing national costume.
Yeah, interesting that they'd be wearing national costume for this, but I suppose if they're leading a group, it's... do we know if it's something they did every morning?
I think they do, but maybe it's because national costume is very warm.
Right. So Chris, just before we go, could you give us a recap or some of those highlights?
Yes, it's hard to summarise in a way, but firstly it's hard to get to, but well worth it. The people we met were very kindly and hospitable. The country is very large, and you really can't see much of it unless you have a long organised tour. But the city of Lhasa is easy to visit in a 5 or 6 day time frame. But you always have to remember altitude when you arrive in Lhasa. It's so high. So if you have some time and if you have some help with altitude, and overall it must be a wonderful place to visit, one of my highlights ever.
I'm sure if you've been listening today, you will agree that they have been some wonderful insights into Tibet and what lovely memories that Chris and Hilary have created.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you. I'm Dee Atkinson and we're with Waipa District Libraries. Ka kite anō.